The Meridian ships drifted silently through the debris field, their crystalline hulls pulsing with weak bioluminescent patterns, a desperate call for help. Their civilization, masters of biological engineering and symbiotic technology, found themselves powerless against the simple devastation of a rogue pulsar's radiation burst. Nearly half their research fleet was dead in space, life support systems failing. Commander Elena Santos of the Earth exploration vessel Horizon watched the sensor readings with growing concern. Her ship wasn't meant for large-scale rescue operations, but the alien vessel's distress patterns were unmistakable, even if their technology was unlike anything humanity had encountered before. Engineering says their hulls are partially organic, her science officer reported. The radiation has disrupted their biological systems at a cellular level. They're not just ships, they're dying. Elena's decision took less than a heartbeat. Begin rescue operations. All hands to stations. The Meridian's first contact with humanity wasn't through grand diplomatic channels or carefully planned meetings. Instead, they watched in wonder as human crews in crude mechanical spacesuits boarded their vessels, bringing with them portable radiation shielding and emergency power systems that, while primitive by Meridian standards, were exactly what they needed. What fascinated the Meridians most wasn't the technology. It was watching the humans adapt. When standard docking procedures failed, they improvised with magnetic grapples. When their universal translators couldn't decode the Meridians' bioluminescent language, they created a basic sign system using light patterns from their suits. Every problem was met with creative solutions pulled together from whatever was available. Dr. Zoira, the lead Meridian scientist, observed the humans with growing fascination. Their ships were angular, mechanical, almost crude compared to the organic grace of Meridian vessels. Yet there was an undeniable elegance in their adaptability, in their willingness to try solutions that no Meridian would have considered. Your species approaches problems differently. She communicated through the newly established light pattern language. We build perfection. You build possibility. Elena smiled behind her faceplate. Necessity is the mother of invention, she replied, the suit's lights flickering in pattern. We're used to making do with what we have. Over the next few days, as the rescue operation continued, both species learned from each other. The Meridians shared their knowledge of biological engineering, showing the humans how their ships were grown rather than built. In return, the humans demonstrated their mastery of improvisational engineering, helping the Meridians modify their organic technology to resist the radiation. What began as a rescue mission evolved into something more, a partnership born of crisis but built on mutual respect. The Meridians were surprised to learn that humanity, despite their relatively young presence in space, had already established peaceful contact with several other species. They weren't conquerors or mere survivors. They were explorers and innovators. Your species is young, Dr. Zira observed during one of their many discussions, her body glowing with patterns of curiosity and respect. Yet you approach the universe with both wisdom and wonder. Many ancient races have lost one or the other. Elena considered this. Maybe it's because we're young that we can do both. We know we have much to learn, but we also know we have something to offer. As the Meridian ships were gradually restored and their crews recovered, both species recognized the potential in their unexpected meeting. The Meridians' mastery of biological technology, combined with human adaptability and innovation, could open new frontiers in space exploration. Before the Horizon departed, Dr. Zira presented Elena with a gift, a small crystal that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. This is a symbol of friendship among our people, she explained. It responds to thought and emotion, growing stronger with the bonds between species. Elena accepted the crystal, watching as it glowed in response to her touch. Then let this be the beginning of a lasting alliance, she replied. There's so much we can learn from each other. Neither species could have known then how crucial this alliance would soon become, or how humanity's reputation for protecting its friends would be tested in fire and light. But in that moment, as human and Meridian ships parted ways, a foundation was laid that would change the course of galactic history. The crystal in Elena's quarters pulsed steadily, a reminder that in the vast darkness of space, friendship could bloom in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the strongest alliances are forged not in the chambers of diplomats, but in moments of simple human kindness. 3 years after the first contact between humans and Meridians, the warning came in a cascade of desperate light signals. The long-range biosensors the Meridians had gifted to human outposts detected something unprecedented. A vast consciousness moving through deep space, consuming everything in its path. Admiral Elena Santos, now commanding the Joint Human Meridian Research Station Aurora, watched the holographic display with growing concern. The entity, which the Meridians called the Nexus, wasn't just a fleet or an army. It was a hybrid of organic and mechanical components that operated as a single predatory intelligence. They strip mine entire systems, Dr. Zira explained, her bioluminescence pulsing with patterns of fear and urgency. They absorb both biological and technological resources into their collective. What they can't use, they destroy. They've already consumed 3 civilizations in the Outer Rim. The tactical display showed the Nexus's trajectory, a direct path toward Meridian space. The Meridians, for all their biological mastery, had always been creators, not warriors. Their ships were designed for exploration and synthesis with natural phenomena, not combat. How long do we have? Elena asked, studying the projection. 2 months at most, Zyra replied. Our long-range vessels are already evacuating outer colonies, but Aurora Prime itself, her lights dimmed. We cannot move an entire civilization in time. Elena's hand touched the crystal pendant she still wore from their first meeting, now a symbol of the official alliance between their species. It pulsed warmly in response. You won't have to, she said firmly. Earth stands with Aurora Prime. The Meridian Council was broadcasting their deliberations throughout the station, their combined bioluminescence creating complex patterns of debate and concern. The human fleet is technologically inferior to the Nexus, one elder pulsed. Their weapons will be useless against such advanced biotechnology. With respect, Elena addressed the council, having learned to speak their light language fluently. Technological superiority isn't everything. Humanity has faced overwhelming odds before. We survive because we think differently. We adapt. We innovate. She activated a tactical display of her own, showing the combined strength of Earth's rapid response fleet. We may not have the most advanced ships, but we have something the Nexus doesn't: creativity and unpredictability. The very things that made our first contact with your species successful. The Council's lights flickered with uncertainty, but Dr. Zyra pulsed in support. I have seen humans turn their limitations into advantages. They understand something we are only beginning to learn. That imperfection can be a source of strength. As the Council deliberated, Elena received a transmission from Earth Command. She expected debate, hesitation, or at least a lengthy strategic discussion. Instead, the response was immediate and unanimous. Protection of allies authorized. Full fleet deployment approved. The next few weeks saw an unprecedented mobilization. Human ships began arriving in Meridian space, their crude but sturdy designs a stark contrast to the crystalline organic vessels of their allies. But more importantly, they'd brought with them humanity's greatest weapon, the ability to think beyond conventional boundaries. Elena watched from Aurora Station as human and Meridian scientists worked together, combining their knowledge in ways neither species had imagined before. The humans' understanding of traditional physics and mechanical engineering began to merge with Meridian biological technology, creating hybrid systems that defied traditional classification. Your people commit so much to protect us, Zyra observed one evening as they watched another convoy of Earth ships arrive. Yet you barely know us. Elena smiled, remembering the crystal she'd received years ago. We know enough. You're our friends, our allies. On Earth, that means something. She turned to face the Meridian scientist. Humanity has a long history of fighting against overwhelming odds. Do you know what we've learned from it? Zyra's lights pulsed with curiosity. That victory doesn't always go to the strongest or most advanced. Sometimes it goes to those who want it most, who are willing to try the impossible because they're fighting for something bigger than themselves. As they spoke, the first long-range scans of the approaching nexus began arriving. The images were terrifying. A vast, ever-shifting mass of biological and mechanical components, all working in perfect, soulless harmony. It was the antithesis of both human individuality and Meridian artistic creation. But where others saw hopeless odds, Alina saw opportunity. The nexus was perfect, optimized, predictable in its perfection. And if humanity had proved anything throughout its history, it was that perfection could be vulnerable to the unpredictable, the innovative, the desperately creative. "Send word to all ships," she ordered, her crystal pendant pulsing with determined light. "It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity's friends." The Nexus approached, confident in its superiority, unaware that it was about to encounter something its perfect calculations couldn't account for. Human determination backed by Meridian ingenuity, a combination that was about to rewrite the rules of space warfare. The research bay of Aurora Station hummed with activity as human engineers and Meridian bioarchitects worked side by side. With only 3 weeks until the Nexus arrived, every moment was precious. The vast chamber had become a fusion of human and Meridian technology. Holographic displays overlapped with living crystal interfaces, while prototype weapons combining mechanical and organic components lined the walls. Admiral Alina Santos stood before a massive tank where a new hybrid creation was taking shape. The device looked like a cross between a traditional human defense satellite and a living Meridian crystal matrix. As she watched, the crystal structure pulsed with patterns of light that somehow synchronized with the mechanical components. "It's beautiful," Dr. Zira commented, her own bioluminescence reflecting off the tank's surface. "We never imagined our living crystals could be integrated with mechanical systems this way." "That's because you were trying to perfect them," Alina replied. "We're asking them to adapt instead." She gestured to where human engineers were carefully introducing mechanical elements into the growing crystal structure. "Your crystals naturally respond to thought and emotion. We're just giving them new ways to express that response." The breakthrough had come from an unlikely source. A junior human engineer who had noticed how Meridian crystals resonated with human emotions. While the Meridians had always used this property for communication and art, the engineer wondered if it could be weaponized. Not by trying to control the crystals, but by working with their natural properties. Around them, other projects were taking shape. Traditional human railguns were being modified with Meridian bio-targeting systems. Meridian sensor arrays were being augmented with human quantum computing cores. Each innovation broke the rules of both species' traditional engineering, creating something entirely new. "The Nexus won't expect this," one of the human weapons specialists explained during a briefing. "They absorb and adapt to known technology. But these hybrid systems, they're not just new technology, they're a new way of thinking about technology itself." But the greatest innovation came from understanding the enemy itself. The Nexus's strength was its perfect unity. Every component working in flawless harmony. That harmony, Alina realized, could be its weakness. "They think as one," she explained to the combined research team. "Which means they have no experience dealing with genuine surprise or chaos. They can adapt to new situations, but that adaptation is calculated, predictable. What if we could force them to face something truly unpredictable?" The answer lay in the very nature of human Meridian cooperation. The hybrid weapons they were creating weren't just unpredictable in their effects, they were unpredictable in their very nature. Each crystal matrix, influenced by the emotions and intentions of its operators, would react differently every time it was used. As the prototype systems were tested, the results exceeded everyone's expectations. The crystal matrices amplified human tactical decisions in ways that created cascading, unpredictable effects. A single hybrid defense platform could generate dozens of different responses to the same threat, making it impossible for any enemy to develop effective countermeasures. It's not perfect, one of the Meridian engineers pulsed with concern. The effects can't be precisely controlled or replicated. Elena smiled. Exactly. That's not a flaw. It's the whole point. The Nexus expects perfection. We're going to give them chaos instead. The innovations weren't limited to weapons. Human and Meridian medical teams worked together to develop new defensive systems for their ships. Traditional human armor was enhanced with living crystal layers that could actively adapt to damage. Meridian biological repair systems were accelerated by human nanotechnology. As the days counted down, Elena received reports from the outer defense perimeter. The Nexus was consuming everything in its path, but its progress had slowed. Analysis suggested it was detecting the unusual energy signatures from Aurora Prime and attempting to analyze them. For the first time in its existence, the collective consciousness was encountering something it couldn't immediately categorize and understand. They're trying to predict what we're creating, Zyra observed. But how can they predict something we ourselves don't fully understand? That was the beauty of it. Every hybrid system they created was unique. Every crystal matrix developed its own characteristics based on its interactions with its human operators. They weren't building a defense system. They were growing one, as unpredictable and adaptive as life itself. In the final days before the Nexus arrival, Elena gathered the combined forces for one last briefing. The station's main chamber was filled with humans and Meridians, their ships visible through the vast crystal windows beyond. What we've created here isn't just a defense system, she addressed them. It's a testament to what can happen when two species trust each other enough to move beyond their own limitations. The Nexus thinks it's invincible because it's perfect. We're about to show them that imperfection, human imperfection, can be the greatest strength of all. As she spoke, the hybrid defense platforms were taking their positions throughout the Meridian system. Each one was unique, each one a fusion of human creativity and Meridian organic technology. Together, they formed not a perfect defense grid, but something far more powerful, a living, adapting network of endless possibilities. The Nexus was about to learn that the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the most advanced technology, but the one who can turn their very nature into an advantage. And humanity, in partnership with the Meridians, had done exactly that. The Nexus emerged from hyperspace like a living storm, its vast biomechanical form blotting out the stars. Initial scans confirmed humanity's worst fears. It was larger than any force they'd ever encountered, a perfect fusion of stolen technologies from dozens of conquered civilizations. But as it approached Aurora Prime, something unprecedented happened. It hesitated. Admiral Elena Santos, watching from Aurora Station's command center, allowed herself a small smile. The hybrid defense grid was already having an effect, its constantly shifting energy patterns confusing the Nexus' strategic calculations. They're trying to analyze our defenses, Zyra reported, her bioluminescence pulsing with tense excitement. But every scan they run returns different results. Because every scan is different, Elena confirmed. The crystal matrices are responding to both their operators' emotions and the Nexus' own probe attempts. They're not just defending, they're learning. The Nexus struck first, launching a wave of biomechanical drones designed to probe for weaknesses. As they approached the outer defense perimeter, the hybrid platforms responded, each in its own unique way. Some fired traditional human railguns enhanced with crystal targeting systems. Others released pulses of crystalline energy that disrupted the drone's neural networks. No two platforms used exactly the same approach. The Nexus's second wave adapted to counter the observed defense patterns, but by then those patterns had already changed. The hybrid systems, influenced by their human operators' tactical decisions and the Meridian's organic technology, evolved new responses faster than the collective consciousness could analyze them. They're trying to establish a pattern, Elena explained to her commanders. Their entire strategy relies on perfect prediction, and counter-adaptation. But you can't predict what we're going to do when we don't even know ourselves. The collective consciousness, faced with this unprecedented situation, made its first mistake. It committed a major portion of its force to a direct assault, assuming it could overwhelm the defenders through sheer mass. The response was immediate and devastating. The hybrid defense platforms synchronized, not into a single perfect pattern, but into a cascade of complementary chaos. Crystal matrices amplified human battle intuition into weapons the Nexus couldn't comprehend. Where it expected resistance, it found void. Where it predicted weakness, it encountered overwhelming strength. Energy spike detected. A human sensor operator called out. The Nexus is attempting to interface directly with our crystal matrices. This was the moment they'd prepared for. As the collective consciousness reached out to absorb and understand the hybrid technology, it encountered something its perfect calculations couldn't process. Human emotion encoded in living crystal. The connection backfired spectacularly. The Nexus is unified consciousness, attempting to process the chaotic emotional data, experienced the equivalent of cognitive dissonance on a massive scale. Parts of its collective began responding to human emotional patterns, acting independently for the first time in its existence. Now, Elena ordered, full spectrum assault. The combined human Meridian fleet, which had been holding back, surged forward. Human warships, their hulls now augmented with living crystal armor, engaged at point-blank range. Meridian vessels, guided by human tactical systems, struck from impossible angles. Each ship acted independently yet somehow in concert with the others, creating a battle pattern that existed somewhere between order and chaos. The Nexus, its perfect unity disrupted by the emotional feedback from the crystal matrices, began to fragment. Individual components of its collective started acting autonomously, some even turning against each other as they processed conflicting emotional data. "They're breaking apart," Zyra observed, her lights pulsing with astonishment. The collective consciousness, it's experiencing individuality for the first time. Elena watched as the mighty Nexus, terror of countless civilizations, began to disintegrate, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the introduction of something it had never encountered before, the unpredictable nature of human emotion combined with Meridian organic technology. "All ships, press the advantage," she commanded. "Don't give them time to re-establish collective control." The battle raged for hours, but its outcome was decided in those first crucial moments when the Nexus encountered something it couldn't categorize or control. By attempting to understand and absorb the hybrid technology, it had infected itself with the very thing it had always considered a weakness: individual thought and emotion. As the last remnants of the once mighty collective consciousness were either destroyed or scattered, Elena stood in Aurora Station's observation dome, watching the cleanup begin. The hybrid defense platforms continued their random patterns, each one a testament to what could be achieved when two species dared to think beyond their own limitations. "We did it," Zyra pulsed softly, joining her at the window. But not in the way anyone expected. Elena touched her crystal pendant, feeling its warm response to her emotions. "That's the point, isn't it? The Nexus lost because it expected a conventional battle. Instead, it got a lesson in human nature, multiplied by Meridian crystal technology." In the months following the Battle of Aurora Prime, the galaxy changed. The story of how humanity and the Meridians had defeated the seemingly invincible Nexus spread across civilized space, but it wasn't just the victory that captured attention. It was how it had been achieved. Admiral Elena Santos found herself addressing an unprecedented gathering at Aurora Station. Representatives from 24 spacefaring species had come to witness the results of human-Meridian cooperation. The station's grand chamber, once a war room, now served as a testament to what was possible when different species worked together. "Many of you came expecting to see some new superweapon," Elena began, her crystal pendant pulsing in harmony with Dr. Zera's bioluminescence beside her. something that could explain how a young species and their allies defeated the greatest threat our galaxy has faced. But what we created here isn't a weapon. It's a new way of thinking. The hybrid defense platforms still orbited Aurora Prime, each one continuing to evolve and change. They had become living symbols of cooperation between organic and mechanical, between emotion and logic, between chaos and order. For too long, many species believed that technological advancement meant moving toward perfect efficiency, toward purely logical solutions. Zyra added, her patterns translating simultaneously through the new hybrid communication systems. The Nexus represented the ultimate expression of that belief, and its ultimate failure. The gathered representatives watched in fascination as human engineers and Meridian bioarchitects demonstrated their hybrid technologies. But more impressive than the technology itself was how it had come to be. Through the marriage of different philosophies, different approaches to problem solving. The greatest threat to progress isn't imperfection, Elena continued. It's the belief that imperfection must be eliminated. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to work with our limitations, to find unexpected solutions precisely because we have to think creatively. The impact of these ideas rippled through galactic society. Species that had long isolated themselves, believing their way was the only way forward, began to reach out. The hybrid technologies developed at Aurora Prime spawned new fields of study, new ways of approaching old problems. But perhaps the most profound change came in how the galaxy viewed humanity. They were no longer seen as just the young, adaptable species that had emerged from Earth. They had become something more. Proof that technological advancement wasn't the only measure of a civilization's worth. Your victory over the Nexus wasn't just military, one ancient species representative observed. You proved that there are other paths to advancement than the ones we followed for millennia. The hybrid defense platforms became templates for a new kind of cooperation. Across the galaxy, species began combining their unique approaches and technologies in ways they had never considered before. The rigid hierarchies of technological advancement that had dominated galactic politics for eons began to dissolve. Elena found herself walking through Aurora Station's Memorial Garden, where crystal formations grew in patterns that told the story of the battle. Each formation was unique, shaped by the memories and emotions of those who had fought. It was both a historical record and a living artwork, another example of how human and Meridian approaches had merged to create something new. We've started something, haven't we? She asked Zura, who had become not just an ally, but a close friend. More than something, Zyra pulsed softly. We've shown the galaxy that true strength doesn't come from perfection or superiority. It comes from understanding that every species, every approach, has value. The crystal pendant at Elena's throat pulsed warmly, its light patterns more complex now after all they had been through. It had become more than just a symbol of friendship between species. It represented a new way forward for galactic civilization. In the years that followed, humanity's reputation grew not through conquest or technological dominance, but through their ability to bridge gaps between species, to find solutions that combine different approaches in unexpected ways. The hybrid technologies they had developed with the Meridians became foundations for new forms of cooperation throughout the galaxy. We keep getting asked how humans knew the hybrid defense would work, Zyra commented during one of their regular meetings. They don't understand that we didn't know. We just knew we had to try. Elena smiled. That's the point they're missing. The greatest discoveries don't come from knowing the answer in advance. They come from being willing to try something new, something uncertain, because you believe in the possibility. As she spoke, Aurora Prime's crystalline structures pulsed with patterns of agreement, their light reflecting off the hulls of ships from dozens of species now regularly visiting the system. Each ship represented a different approach to space travel, a different way of thinking about the universe, and in their diversity lay the galaxy's true strength. The defeat of the Nexus had marked the end of an era, the end of the belief that there was only one path to advancement, only one way to measure a civilization's worth. In its place, a new understanding had emerged, that the greatest achievements come not from perfection, but from the willingness to embrace different perspectives, to learn from each other, and to face the unknown together. As Elena looked out at the stars, her crystal pendant pulsing with shared emotion, she knew that humanity's role in the galaxy would never be that of conquerors or even supreme innovators. Instead, they would be bridges, connecting different species and their approaches, showing that in the vast expanse of space, the greatest strength lies not in perfection, but in the endless possibilities that arise when different ways of thinking come together.